traded the expansive views of Empower Field at Mile High for a cozy return home this offseason as we are back at UC Health Training Center for Broncos Weekend off-season edition. Welcome in to UC Health Training Center, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer alongside the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater. Steve, we're back. We're home.
Yes, we're home. It's beautiful. I'm happy to be back home. And the weather here has just been amazing. That's why we live here in Colorado.
I know. Off-season's treating you well. You rested. You feel refreshed?
I feel good.
Yeah?
I feel good. Yes, I'm ready. No, I won't say hit anybody. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Well, Steve, we've had a lot happen since we last chatted. The Broncos hired a new general manager, George Payton. We've had the Senior Bowl. Matthew Stafford reportedly traded to the Rams. A lot to get to. I want to start here, though, because the quarterback position, as it is almost every offseason, is on the top of everybody's mind. The word we keep hearing around the quarterback position for the Broncos and Drew Lock is competition. Mm-hmm. Broncos need to find competition for Drew Lock. But I've got an issue because the people who are also saying that the Broncos need to bring in competition, some of them are also saying, hey, Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, these are the names that the Broncos...
That's not competition.
That's not competition. So I want to define competition versus those guys who are replacements, because if the Broncos are or any team are going to be going after those big names, you're going to have to pay a hefty price to get them, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. It will be a hefty price, and those guys will be expected to start, especially considering how much they're making, the experience that they've had. But when you say competition, I think what you're looking forward to is some guys who are more maybe on Drew Lock's level, maybe a little higher than Drew Lock, but they will come in and compete in training camp. Now, I got some guys here on my list who got some good experience last year, but they're free agents. They may be available. First off, Mitchell Trubisky.
Okay, well, now Bears fans would they were hot and cold on old Mitchell Trubisky last year.
I know. He came in. He had some good games, had some bad games. He and Nick Foles, they were battling it out up there. But he's a guy who he would be competition. It wouldn't necessarily be that he's going to come in here and win the starting job if Drew Lock has a great offseason and comes back ready to play. Ryan Fitzpatrick. That wouldn't necessarily be competition. I think it would be if Ryan Fitzpatrick happened to win the job, he would just kind of holding it down, keeping the seat warm, making sure that we have a good person playing while Drew Lock is getting better, knowing that Drew Lock is going to be the future quarterback.
Now, wait a minute. With Fitzpatrick, though, and Tua, was that messing up his development, bringing in Fitzpatrick and then benching Tua? Or were you like, you know what, it's fine, it doesn't matter, you got to be mentally tough?
No, I think that's fine. I think you have to be mentally tough, and it worked out sometimes. He came in and he won a couple of ball games for them, so I think that was a good recipe, and they used him well. Another guy, Andy Dalton, guy who has some experience. We don't know if Drew Lock can beat him out. Now, he's been a starter in the league. He's been effective. He hasn't reached the tip top, though, but I think that would be good competition for Drew Lock. Those are guys. One other guy, Mike Glennon, former first rounder.
Okay.
Now, and I'm always a believer that you never know what a guy can do when he's in a different environment. So, he's a former first-round draft pick. A lot of high expectations for him. Hey, who knows? With these coaches, the right words might be said, the right teammates might be on the team to inspire him. Who knows? So those are guys who not only I think would be good competition, but they had a lot of reps last year. They passed for over 1,000 yards, and I think it would be good competition.
How much does chemistry with Pat Shurmur or fit play into those guys? I mean, could you see all those guys kind of fitting into Pat Shurmur's system?
I don't know. I mean,
you're right.
It all depends. It would take, obviously, Pat Shurmur sitting down talking with them, kind of seeing what kind of vibe they have, and asking them some questions, seeing how smart they are, and watching tons of film to see if this is the kind of quarterback that would fit in his system.
Want to add one name to that list? Jameis Winston, Saints backup.
I like it.
You like? Okay, so you like
it.
Okay,
that would be competition as well.
That's it. So that is competition.
Yes.
Okay. Because and now we said all these names.
Is Winston available?
I think he's a free agent this year. Add him to the list.
Yes, he is. He's on there. He didn't play much last year.
That's the thing. He didn't get much play with Taysom Hill and then Drew Brees, of course, at the starting position. Does reps and playing time last year, is that going to be a heavy factor when you're thinking about competition for Drew Lock?
For me, it is.
Okay.
It may not be for anyone else, but I want a guy. I don't want a guy who's been rusty. He's been on the shelf watching, bringing the clipboard out. I want a guy that's been out there getting some good play time, getting that experience, and just like Drew Lock did. Drew Lock got a lot of experiences last year, some good, some not so good, but he got the experience, and hopefully he'll be able to build on that here in the offseason and next year.
Let's talk about Drew Lock, too, because if just me personally, I think, and this is not going to be popular with some fans in Broncos country, I think Drew Lock is going to start game 1 of 2021 for the Denver Broncos. I really do. Regardless, because I think whether they bring in competition or not, I think if they do bring in competition, he's good enough to win the job. And if they don't bring in competition, strict competition, I think that he has the confidence and the ability to demonstrate that he is the unquestioned number 1 starter. Now, he didn't have a great 2020, but just from what I've seen and what I've heard, he's in Denver working out. He's back at home working with his quarterback coach as well. He's doing the things that he needs to do to establish himself as a number 1 starter. So now, my question...
I like how you came back there. You said if they bring in competition. Now, if they bring in someone like a Dak Prescott.
No, that's not competition.
Okay, all right.
That's not that is again, you're paying too much money. You can't justify.
I agree. I don't want to dismantle the franchise to bring in a guy and we don't know what type of success they'll have here.
So now, that being said about Locke, how much, because he's hearing this. I mean, guys say I'm blocking it out. I'm not paying any attention. He's hearing some of this. So how much can this mess with guys? How much can it motivate him? And from a player's perspective, have you seen it go both ways?
Well, I think it will motivate him. I don't know if I've seen it go both ways. Most of the times, it does affect the player, especially if that player doesn't end up leaving. However, as a professional athlete, you got to have some thick skin. These types of things are going to happen. And you best believe each team is trying to improve each and every week. During the offseason, during the season, if they can get a player and replace you and pay that player less money, or if they have to pay them even more money, if they feel like they're that much better than you, teams are going to do that because their ultimate objective is to win football games. Put together a squad that has good chemistry.
Lastly, I want to talk about something. Our last show, we had Mike Kliss on, and he said that the Broncos are going to have to focus on the defense in the offseason. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a retooling. You've got to think about Justin Simmons possibly getting a long-term deal, franchise tagging him again, what the team's going to do with Von Miller. So thinking about the offseason, how heavy, and I'm talking to a defensive guy, how heavy do the Broncos need to go on defense? Are we talking first, second-round picks? Defensively, in addition to a high-level first-rounder, maybe just one of each, how heavy does this retooling need to be?
Well, considering last year, we went pretty heavy on the offense.
It's time.
In the first round. I think it's time unless they feel like there's a young quarterback who they would want to move up in the draft. We don't do anything in free agency. We don't bring anybody in who has some experience, which I guess that would be my preference, really, to get somebody who has a little bit of experience. I don't think we'll be in the runnings for Justin Fields because that'll cost too much as well. But if they feel like, hey, we want to get us another quarterback to compete with Drew Lock, and that would be a true competition because Drew Lock has, a year and a half, really a year. I say a year, really, with the injuries that he's had, the games that he's missed. He's got a solid year under his belt of experience. I think that it will be good for Drew Lock to have that competition. And it'd be a nice little battle. Training camp would be very interesting.
We're going to get to the draft, Steve, in subsequent episodes. It's a long offseason, Steve. We've got to pace ourselves. We've got to pace ourselves a little bit. Speaking of pacing ourselves, we've got to take a break. But when we come back on Broncos Weekend, Steve is chatting with Big Al. Alfred Williams is joining the program to talk about the 2021 Broncos offseason. Plus, Alexis Perry is stopping by to give you, the fan, a chance to sit where we sit, do what we do, and get the realest takes from Broncos country. It's the voice of the fan on Broncos Weekend. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Now, Broncos country, you know it and I know it. The offseason is about resting, recharging, and, of course, reconnecting with some of the folks that we might have lost touch with during that busy football season. So Steve Atwater is going to be reconnecting with some of his best football friends all throughout the offseason here on Broncos Weekend. And for the first episode, we had to go big. So who better than Big Al himself, Alfred Williams. Alfred is sitting down with the Hall of Famer to talk about the Broncos 2021 offseason.
Alfred Williams. Pro Bowler, two-time Super Bowl champ, and my great friend. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing so good, Steve, man. It's always wonderful to see you and talk to you. And, as we get ready for this last portion of winter, I'm looking forward to spring.
All right, first things first. Did you win any money today playing golf?
No.
You normally do, though. So it's not an unreasonable question to ask.
On a warm day in February, I'll just take any opportunity to get out on the golf course. Winning, I'd like to win, but it didn't happen today.
Man, that's all right. All right. Hey, let's pop into it. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. What do you want to see happen with this quarterback situation? What would George Payton have to do regarding the quarterbacks to make you, Alfred Williams, say, man, that was a good call?
Well, I think he has two options. The one option that I see that is the best option is to go and get Deshaun Watson. With Deshaun Watson, I think that you have your quarterback for the next 10, 15 years. And that's a long time in this business when we're talking about the average NFL career is 3 years and 4 games. So if we could get a generational quarterback like Deshaun Watson, that would be outstanding. But I still haven't given up on Drew Lock. I don't want to see another quarterback brought in here to compete with Drew Lock for this position. This is his opportunity to have this job in the second year of this offensive coordination. And that's what I want to see. I want to see Deshaun Watson or nobody else added to the quarterback room.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. Now, regarding the NFL draft, what do you want to see the Broncos do? Offense, defense, what do you think their focus should be and what positions are high priority for you?
I think the way I look at it is that especially in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, you got to just pick the best player available. You just have to. But even if you have a glut at one position, then it also means that you have draft capital and possibly trade scenarios down the line. So I think it's always wonderful that you can you can fill a need, but that's not necessarily what the NFL draft is for. It's for the acquisition of talent. So if you're asking me to
even if it's a receiver,
even if it's a receiver, Steve. I mean, I know that sounds crazy.
It does,
but I'm telling you, but you know that. Can you ever really have enough great receivers? Ask Kansas City Chiefs. The answer is no.
All right. Last question for you, Al. Who do you got in the Super Bowl? Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who you got?
That's the easiest question going, man.
No, I'm anxious to hear what you got to say.
I don't think that the rest of the NFL community understands the incredible amount of stress that the Kansas City Chiefs have put on the AFC West. What they've been able to do in football terms has been unbelievable. Patrick Mahomes is simply right now playing at the greatest level I've ever seen a quarterback play at.
Yeah.
And that's including our very own John Elway, who's made multiple trips to the Super Bowl. But the things that he's able to do and the way that he's manipulating the defenders right now and still getting out and making plays, it is incredible to watch him. It's the best show that I've ever seen on offense, and you couple that with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and a great defensive coordinator in Spagnuolo, I think that the Kansas City Chiefs will win this game easily by 10 points.
Easily by 10?
10 points.
All right, let me ask this way. Who do you want to win?
Who do I want to win? It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. I mean, I have friends on both sides of the game, but let me ask you this. Have you ever seen an offense as good or productive as the Kansas City Chiefs?
No. And Tyreek Hill, a lot of people think he's just fast. He has amazing hands. He's got a great mentality. He plays hard every single play. Travis Kelce, he's a beast as well. They have a great roster, great coaching. They're doing everything the right way. But I'm pulling for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm hoping that Tom Brady can ride off into the sunset with the dub.
All right, brother. All right, man.
Hey, thank you, Al.
Nice seeing you.
You too, man. Thank you, man.
Yourself.
Our thanks to Big Al for taking some time with us this week. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, we are giving Broncos country the microphone. We are getting the real takes from one of the biggest fans in Broncos country. It's our new segment, Voice of the Fan. That's next. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Now, Broncos country, we're kicking off this offseason with a really cool opportunity. We know you guys love football. We hear from you guys all the time in comments and tweets, calls, even in person. We know you love your football and know it well, so we're giving you the opportunity to sit where we sit, do what we do, and chop it up with the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater. This is a new segment we're calling Voice of the Fan. Alexis Perry is standing by with our first fan of the offseason, Michael McQuaid, all the way from Ireland.
Thanks so much, Matt. Steve and I are so excited to be joined by one of the most passionate fans from across the pond, the one and only Michael McQuaid of Broncos Europe and the Irish NFL show. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here today.
What's up, Mike?
Thanks so much. Yeah, Steve, Alexis, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's an awesome opportunity to be the first fan on this show, so I really appreciate it.
We're so glad it's you. You know, Super Bowl 55 is just 2 days away. And I know around this time of year, it's hard for Broncos fans to not be nostalgic, thinking back to where this team was just 5 years ago, beating the Panthers in Super Bowl 50. But let's fast forward 5 years. There's a new Peyton in town, George Paton, who hopes to get this team back to its winning ways. So what was your initial reaction, Michael, to the George Paton hiring?
Well, ironically, we were actually live whenever the whole Elway news broke, and it was just crazy. But I just want to firstly just say, obviously, on behalf of, I guess, every fan in Europe, a massive thanks to John Elway for everything he's done for this team over his tenure, both as a player and as a staff member. But I'm really excited to see what George Paton can do. Like, some of the things you've come out and heard about him, he's a stud, a great evaluator, and I think a guy that a lot of people have said is just a great hire and a guy that should have been GM years ago. So I'm really excited to see what he can do, and it shows with that 6-year contract that it could be a key moment for the franchise to really try and set a bar now over these next few years. So really pumped. I wish the draft was tomorrow. I wish game 1 was next weekend, and yeah, I just can't wait to see what happens.
George Paton, you know, he hit the ground running. He was in on conversations with the Lions in hopes of picking up veteran quarterback Matthew Stafford, but he didn't want to give up oodles of young talent in order to do so. So do you feel like adding a veteran quarterback is an absolute must this offseason, or would you like to see Drew Lock get at least another year with Pat Shurmur and like this offense and just prove that he can be the future of this franchise?
I'm very much in a camp where I feel like Drew deserves another season sort of to develop at the minute, because I don't think he had a fair go at it last year. If you look at COVID and the whole situation, and obviously the injuries, we didn't have any OTAs, there was no mini camp, having a new OC and a new system, it wasn't easy for him. And I think he definitely deserves more games. And I think it's that sort of situation where, okay, maybe you could bring in somebody maybe in a backup way. For example, Andy Dalton came into Dallas. I remember that night when Dak went down, and he done a decent job in Dallas for the rest of the season. So for me, if you are going to bring somebody in as a veteran, it needs to be a good veteran and a guy that has experience. And for me, Andy Dalton would be that guy. But I'm very much at the minute, like, you know, let's keep Drew for now and see what we can do. Because, like, look at guys like Josh Allen. You give him time and you can see what happens. It's almost like just having a wee bit more patience, and we could maybe reevaluate it next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, he didn't have Cortland, so he could just throw the ball up, Cortland, and go up and get it, you know, so he deserves another shot. But I think that there should be another quarterback here to at least really compete with him, and the other quarterback have a legitimate chance of beating him out versus just having a guy on the roster to, you know, to say, all right, well, it's really Drew's job, and this guy's going to play only if Drew gets hurt. I think he needs a really good competition. That's going to make Drew a better quarterback. And I think this team will be better by knowing that we have two quarterbacks that can play if something happens to one of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, if George Paton and this team believes that Drew Lock is the guy that gives the Broncos the best chance to win in 2021, it is nice knowing that he was starting to build some chemistry with some of his young targets. So, yeah. Michael, which weapon in this Broncos arsenal are you most looking forward to watching develop over the next few years?
Alexis, I think this is the good thing, because it's very hard to answer this. There's so many great young players in this team. For me, I'm going to almost cast my mind back to that last game of the season. Jerry Jeudy, the potential Jerry Jeudy has is unbelievable. And it sort of came out in that game against the Jets. He really showed some fantastic elite running chops, deep speed and quickness at the line of scrimmage at times. And for me, I'm pumped to see what he can do against press coverage and just generally in 2021. I think he could be, honestly, if he gets off to the right start to the season next year, I think he's going to be honestly, the roof is so high for him. And then, I mean, Steve, you talked about Courtland Sutton there as well. It's a very exciting time to be a Broncos fan, I think, at the minute.
Yeah, I agree, Michael. In addition to Jerry Jeudy, I'm excited about KJ Hamler and my man Albert Okwuegbunam. I'm hoping that he comes back from his injury. Same with Cortland, that they come back fully healthy and able to contribute the way that we thought they would last year.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for being our very first voice of the fan. How can people continue to hear your voice? How can they follow you?
We're on Broncos Europe at Broncos EUR on Twitter. And you can also catch me, if you enjoy the NFL generally, the Irish NFL show at IRE NFL show. Big show on Sunday. And appreciate your time. It's fantastic to do this. Thank you.
Great stuff, Michael. Thank you. Appreciate you.
You are amazing. Thank you so much. Matt, back to you.
Our thanks to Michael McQuaid for taking some time with us this week. Shout out to our Broncos Europe friends and our Broncos Europe crew across the pond. They're holding it down, the fan base on the other side of the pond for us, so we really appreciate all of their dedication throughout the years. That'll do it for us today, though, on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to Big Al Alfred Williams. For the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater, I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you next week.